Ahoj všichni, it's Jen from Dream Prague. Now, I have been living as an American expat in Prague, Czech Republic for over 10 years. And I've started to get used to how things work here. And in my humble opinion, there are a lot of things that just seem to work better here than back home in the United States. And I would love to see some of those things implemented into American life. But as a born and bred American, I know that these Czech or European ways of doing things would never work if we tried them back in the United States. That's what we're going to get into in this video. But before we start, I want to thank my sponsor, italki. In my opinion, there's no better way to learn another language than regular one-on-one conversations with a native speaker. And that's what italki has been giving to over 10 million language learners over the past 15 years. This month, italki is celebrating its 15-year anniversary. And I recently celebrated my 100th Czech lesson with italki teachers. The best thing about my italki lessons is that I work with the teacher to create a lesson plan that suits my needs. And I can have my lesson at any time, anywhere. It's the perfect way to keep up with my studies, even when I'm abroad. You clicked on this video because you were interested in the cultural differences between Czechs and Americans. Where do you think I learned all these things? From conversations with my English students and conversations with my Czech teachers. Because learning a language is about much more than grammar and vocabulary. It's about learning from other cultures, and that's exactly what I get in every one of my italki lessons. Right now, italki is offering big deals and rewards to help you discover your language learning potential. Claim your italki 15th anniversary special offer in the link in the description box below. And get started on your language learning adventure. When you click the link, you help me support this channel so I can keep making you more videos. So thank you. Okay, on to the things that are brilliant in Czechia, but would never work in America. Czechia mandates at least 4 weeks paid vacation for employees, while some employers will give even up to 8 weeks per year. And the Czechs will often take all 4 weeks at once, logging off for the whole month of August and spending that time at their chata in the countryside or down south by the water. I think we can all agree that this is a far superior model to the American guarantee of no vacation days per year. So let's give Americans 4 weeks of paid vacation. Never gonna happen. Here's why. The standard vacation time in the United States is 2 weeks of paid vacation with a salaried position. But if you're an hourly paid worker, you won't even get that. If you do have 2 weeks of vacation time, you'll usually break it up into a few 3 to 4 day trips, because 2 consecutive weeks away from work would surely put your job in jeopardy. And an American on vacation will almost never log off completely. We'll take phone calls from our bosses, emails from our clients, and even messages from coworkers who have emergency questions. Even American advertisements for relaxing vacations always show someone relaxing on a beautiful beach with a laptop. Because Americans would be super stressed out if they couldn't access their work emails. And that stress would ruin their vacation. Americans are raised in a society that prioritizes work and making money and productivity above all else. We feel lazy or guilty if we take too much time off. Or worse, we think our boss will think we are lazy and that they might take those 2 weeks to look for someone to replace us. In Czechia, you pump your gas first and then you go inside to pay. Come to think of it, I've never actually seen a pay at the pump credit card machine in the Czech Republic. In America, you pay inside first, a certain amount, and then you go outside and pump that amount of gas. Here's why I've gotten used to the Czech system. If you pump first, then you know exactly how much you owe. You don't go inside, pay $25, and then only pump $23 and have to go get change. $25 for a tank of gas. I'm clearly 65 years old. When I was your age, gasoline was $1.09 for a gallon, and I used to drive all the way from Tijuana, Mexico to San Francisco on a $20 bill. No, it's true, I did. Pumping first and paying second would never work in America. Do you know how many people would drive off without paying? Half? A quarter? It's not that we're not honest people, but people seem to steal more there. Some would just forget to pay. One time, I actually drove off with the nozzle still in my gas tank. That would never have happened if I'd had to pay after I pumped. True story. I was distracted. It was finals time. That really cost me a fortune. 91% of homes in the United States have air conditioning, or climatization, as the Czechs call it, costing homeowners $29 billion every year and releasing over 100 million tons of carbon dioxide into the air. Yuck. The whole world would definitely be better off without Americans blasting air conditioning 24/7. The Czechs prefer more environmentally friendly ways of keeping cool by strategically opening and closing various doors and windows at certain times of day. Czechs also seem to hold some prejudice against air conditioning units, and they believe that air conditioning makes you sick. That's also why Czechs never leave the house with wet hair or sit on a cold stone floor. To an American, these are nothing but old wives' tales. In California, leaving the house with my hair wet was the only way to survive the 110 degrees Fahrenheit temperature that waited for me in my car. To be fair, Czechs are not accustomed to very hot temperatures. Their summers are usually pretty mild, with a handful of insufferably hot days, which give Czechs something to complain about, which makes them feel better. Another factor is that many Czech buildings are made from thick cement and stone walls that keep the buildings naturally pretty cool. Whereas sometimes it feels like American homes are built from cardboard and paper mache that seem to suck the heat into the building. But asking an American to be more conscientious about the environment by turning off their air conditioning is like asking them to risk heat stroke. They wouldn't survive to 2030, let alone to the end of the week, if you took away their air conditioning. Climates in the United States would not be tolerable without air conditioning, especially those in the South and Western desert climates like Arizona and California, where I'm from. Air conditioning is considered to be as basic a necessity as running water. Unfortunately, Americans won't be giving up their climatization anytime soon. Credit cards are an almost indispensable part of the American economy, and fairly rare in the typical Czech wallet. Only 25% of Czech people use credit cards, while 62% of Americans do. And we Americans get hooked young. Those sneaky credit card representatives put up tents on university campuses, offering students, free meals if they sign up for a credit card, which is great because students are usually pretty broke and could use a free meal. The problem with credit cards is that financially illiterate people, students, usually spend more than they can afford to pay back, and so they get into an endless cycle of high interest debt. And that's how the American economy thrives. Wouldn't it be great if Americans used credit cards less often and, like the Czechs, used debit cards instead, only spending the money they already have in their bank accounts? Could never happen. And here's why. Americans who have never lived abroad might not realize this, but an individual credit score is a uniquely American concept. The Czechs don't even use credit scores. So a credit score is a number from 300 to 850 that every adult in America has based on your credit history or your debt history, how often you pay your debt back. And this tells someone how creditworthy you are, whether they should loan you money or not. And here's the thing, A good credit score doesn't really tell you how financially responsible a person is. Let's say you have $100,000 in credit card debt, but you pay the minimum payment of $100 every month. You probably have an excellent credit score, even though you have a big debt. Let's say you pay for everything in cash, you live rent-free in your grandmother's basement, and take the bus instead of making monthly car payments, and you put all of your savings in your mattress. You probably have a terrible credit score and will never be able to get an apartment of your own. And Americans can't get a good credit score without spending money on credit cards. What better way to endure the long workday than enjoying a nice frosty pint of Pilsner at lunch? The Czechs know this, and so they regularly sit down to an hour-long lunch with a hot meal and a nice cold beer in the middle of the workday. Since Americans are such workaholics, I think this would be a great custom to adopt into American working life. Take your full lunch hour, relax, enjoy a meal. You deserve that noon beer. Not a chance. In the US, drinking at lunchtime is seen as unprofessional and maybe even irresponsible. What if you got tipsy and confused the columns in your Excel spreadsheet? We prefer to keep our alcohol consumption to a rapid flow of shots in dark nightclubs after work, or a solitary bottle of wine alone in bed. Much more dignified. And the number one best thing that the Czechs do that I wish Americans would do is take their dogs everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Czechs bring their dogs to work, to the gym, to shops. Every other table in a Czech restaurant has a dog patiently sleeping under it, not begging for scraps, not tripping the waitress, just chilling like they own the place. The only place they're not allowed is like a supermarket. And so you'll often see a row of dogs outside, some on the leash, some off the leash, patiently waiting for their owners to come out. As much as many Americans would love a world filled with dogs, this could never happen there. Dogs in Czechia are exceptionally well behaved. Dog owners here spend a lot of time training them. You can often see a Czech person having a private conversation with their dog on the sidewalk, whispering some magic commands so that they don't run into the street even though they're not on a leash. In the United States, most dog owners just aren't that committed to dog training. Generally, dogs in the US can't be trusted off-leash in public. They're kind of kept to an owner's backyard. A dog in the workplace would probably be distracting, and they might bark at your least friendly coworker. And while Americans usually love dogs, they generally consider all animals to be dirty. So dogs are not allowed mostly in restaurants. Now, I personally think this is a vicious cycle. When you leave your dog home all day while you're at work, they develop kind of like a psychosis. They go a little bit nuts when you take them out in public, making them uncontrollable. But if you take your dog to the office or to the pub or to help you pick out a new hat, and they'll act like the dignified best friend you want them to be. That's all for now. Did I miss anything? Can you think of any other cultural habit that would just absolutely not work in the other country? Please let me know in the comments below. Uvidíme se příště. Ahoj!